just if we can start off with some selection. Chelsea Randall, do you have an update on her?
No, so Chelsea won't play. She's progressing really well. And
if you double click.
Sorry, that was me. Sorry.
Yeah, so Chelsea won't play. Progressing really well. Very similar to how she progressed last time. So it's at the minor end of things, but clearly we'll probably be more conservative than we were last time. Although I don't know if we could have been that much more conservative. So but she's progressing well, but she won't be available this week.
So do you think it'll be more like 2 weeks this time around? Probably.
Once again, it's hard once they get up to full speed and they do all of the movements and kick the ball, and then you sort of go, well, what more do they need to do? So we'll definitely treat it in that fashion. But yeah, clearly last time round probably leaves you a little more gun shy.
But you don't think you brought her back too soon?
I don't. As I say, by the time we came to making the call, our mindset all along was, let's be conservative here. She's a pretty important player for us long term. But once they've completed everything, then you just go, well, she's right. But as it turned out, it is a slightly different spot. So they could be independent events, I guess, is the other way to look at it.
Yeah. And any COVID ins or outs this week?
Yeah, so we obviously had 3 players unavailable through the protocols last week, and all of those will be available. And we also had Hannah Munyard, who was just available last week, but had an elongated time without much opportunity to train. So there's 4 potential returns from that point of view. But we'll have another one that goes out under the same protocols. So it's a bit of a revolving door.
The 4 coming back in, they're actually quite key players for you, but you won well without them. You must be really happy with how the side is adapting to these ins and outs. That's making, I imagine, selection quite difficult for you.
Yeah, selection is really challenging this season and every season, to be honest. But probably, one of the most pleasing aspects of last week's performance was the players that came in that had been really waiting for an opportunity. All of them grabbed that opportunity. All of them played really well and played their role within the team. So when that happens, it's just great for the squad, great for the confidence and belief of not only those players that came in, but probably the others who are also waiting for that opportunity to see their teammates come in and to sort of step up to the level pretty well. Gives them great belief that when their time comes, they'll be ready as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Doc. I'll hand over to someone else.
No worries, Liz. Thanks.
Josh from 9.
G'day, Doc. Again, sorry, that was my tech team before interrupting your answer.
Fine, mate.
Some tough selection calls then, I guess, to make with 4 regular first team players back this week. And given that performance last weekend against the D's, how difficult will that be to kick out 4 other players?
Yeah, very tough. I wouldn't reference it as kicking him out. Whoever misses this week is going to be, particularly stiff because it was a really strong performance, and in many cases you can't do any more than perform at the level that they have been. But ultimately, we just got to make the calls that we believe are right for the team against this particular opponent. And every opponent provides some slightly different and unique challenges. So sometimes some of the calls are based on what your opponent's going to throw up as well. So, but yeah, it's certainly not a pleasant task telling people who performed really well that they're not going to get a game this week.
Do you still get surprised by the ability of Erin Phillips? I mean, you're 2 of the more attacking weapons in the competition out last week, and she just stood up and really took that forward line by the scruff of its neck. After everything she's achieved, does she ever surprise you in her ability to perform week in, week out?
No, she's obviously she's the ultimate competitor in the end, and clearly she doesn't have to prove anything to anyone. She's achieved everything that she could possibly achieve. and yet she's still hungry for success, and therefore she's willing to put in the work and also to put her body through a fair bit in order to be out there and contributing. And yeah, clearly last week she was really significant in the outcome. Probably, obviously, the goals were a standout feature, but just her ability to pressure. And I thought, even so, obviously Ash has been the kind of the story of the first month, but I really liked her game as well. She missed a couple of chances late, but equally her ability to compete and to provide pressure and just to be a really good target for us up there was really significant. And then this week it was Erin who was able to bob up and kick a few.
Are you wary of a Carlton side that probably hasn't got the results that it would have liked so far this season?
Yeah, I think it would. They're obviously not where they want to be, but yeah, when you look at the list and the talent that's there, then you've got to be respectful of that. And yes, they'll be desperate to get their season going. Clearly, they had a win early, but they need to start winning now. So they're going to be at their best, and they've got talent. So that's a dangerous combination. They're also really skillful. Looking at some of their offense, some of their kicking skill is really high end, and on a big deck that that poses a big threat. So yeah, we'll be ready for the challenge.
Great, thanks, Doc. Good luck.
Thank you.
Theo from Channel 7.
Thanks, Danny. Hello, Doc. I was just going to ask, now that you're a couple of games in and you're undefeated, do you feel like you've got a handle on the competition in terms of where or who your biggest challenger might be towards the pointy end?
Yeah, it's interesting. Around this time of every season, everyone sort of thinks they've got it worked out. But history sort of tells you that there's a bit to come yet. So I'm very reticent to ever read too much into early season form. And it's a bit different in AFLW because early season form is actually mid-season form. But what will happen over the next month, I would envisage, is that things will shift again. And probably Carlton are an example of that, whereby, as we were just discussing, they've got some high-end talent, and if they get going, they could pose a real threat. So not at this point, mate. We'll just let it shake out a little bit more, and maybe in the last round 10, we might have a rough idea.
Fair enough. You talk about how wonderful Erin's been since the competition's inception, really, and what she was able to do last week and turn the game. Do you get a little nervous when you think about the mob down the road having a women's team coming in?
The Erin Phillips question, yes. I reckon it'll be interesting, but the interesting thing will be, what will be more interesting, I should say, is what happens this season. So we'll manage all that as the season plays out afterwards. But for the moment, we're just pretty happy that Erin Phillips is, premiership captain, All-Australian, two-time best and fairest winner. What else could she do for us, I wonder, in the next little while?
One more flag.
That'd be nice.
Beauty. Thanks, mate. Good luck.
All right, Danny from the Victor Harbour Times.
Hey, Doc, how you going?
Yeah, Danny.
Question about playing Carlton at Icon Park. Like you touched on before, obviously Carlton haven't had the run that they've hoped for, but they are pretty strong at Icon Park. It's their fortress. How do you go into that mentally, especially with the size of the crowds and the fans that Carlton has?
Yeah, they're obviously a really well supported team, and the ground is a little bit different to that which we've been playing. Although South obviously played round one on South, which is a big deck, but it's a bit more open, and so therefore defensively that can pose a greater challenge for you. But on the flip side, potentially there's more opportunity for you to use the ball and use that space as well. So I don't know how the game will play out, but I envisage that potentially it'll be a little bit more open than last week, which was fairly contested. Not fairly, it was very contested, and so therefore that just means you have to have a slightly different skill set right at the top of its game. In terms of their fans and the supporters, hopefully there's a big crowd. Atmosphere at the game is really important. We played over there at Punt Road against West Coast, and fortunately we had a number of our supporters who travelled and some locals that were over there. So we actually had a really good strong crowd representation at our last interstate game. But you'd envisage that maybe Carlton have a few more, but hopefully that just provides, that little bit of atmosphere which adds to the spectacle.
For sure. It's 5 years ago today since the very first Crows AFLW game. Can you tell me a bit about how the Crows culture has developed since that first game?
That is an elite stat. I'm very impressed with that stat. 5 years today. That's brilliant.
Yeah, it came up as a Facebook memory for me. I went actually with Hannah Munyard. She was in my footy team at the time. So
wow, there you go.
It's cool to see that development.
Well, I'm not on Facebook, Twitter, or any other of those platforms, so I don't get those nice messages. But that's amazing, isn't it? To think, is that right? For only five years? Wow.
Yeah.
It's it seems, well, as a club, it seems kind of unbelievable that we haven't always had an AFLW team. It just feels like the norm now. It feels like our club is whole, and that it's a much better place for having our women's team. So to think that it is such a short period of time is actually pretty amazing. In terms of the culture, yeah, I mean, we're very fortunate, really strong leaders that set things in place early, and I've been fortunate enough to come in on the back of that and have just enjoyed it thoroughly. In terms of how that develops, it's just a lot of people working really hard, but also just being respectful of each other and making sure the environment's a good place to be.
Wait, can you give me your thoughts on the growth of the competition as a whole as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, amazing growth, unbelievable growth, and particularly the skill development. From season one to what we're witnessing now, just the standard of the play across the whole competition, to my eye, is through the roof and only continuing to head north. So it's exciting. Ultimately, if this is what we've got after 5 years, I'd love to see what's going to happen after 10 and 15. So a great story, a great footy story across the country, and one that we're really happy to be part of here in SA.
Definitely. And last one, the AFLW begins this weekend.
Yes.
How close of an eye do you keep on that competition?
Yeah, we'll obviously have players playing in that competition. So those games in particular, we'll have people attending. We'll make sure that we've got all of the vision off those games and that we're assessing our players really thoroughly. And then, beyond that, we've always got an eye on the local talent coming through, which is one of the great elements of the AFLW is the state-based drafting. It means that all the vast majority of your list comes from your backyard, and that's certainly the case for us. We've drafted almost exclusively out of the SANFL for the last 3 years, so we're really excited about the talent that's coming through, and we look forward to what should be another improved season. I know last year, watching some of the games, there was a lot of really young players, so 15, 16-year-old players playing league footy, and that's good. But I think it'll be even better when across the comp that age bracket sort of drifts up, so that we get some more senior players running around there as well.
Yeah, they've got the development league for the first time this year as well, so that just provides a further pathway, doesn't it? Absolutely,
yeah, it's a good initiative.
Yeah, thank you.
No worries.
Have we got anyone on from 10, or are you guys just recording? Nope, no Jono on from 10. Lachlan from the Inner Sanctum.
Yeah, hi Matt. I was just going to ask around, you mentioned the crowd factor ahead of the clash at Icon Park. Do you talk to the group about your playing days and how you experience the crowd? Obviously everyone's different, but how did you go in terms of playing into the crowd factor?
They don't believe me that I've actually played, so there's not much point referencing my career. Well, I'm trying to think about, the first time I ever went to Princess Park, as it was then, I was actually sitting in the crowd, and they had, what was great about the Carlton crowd at that time is they had nicknames for all of the Carlton players. So if Harry Madden went near the ball, he was Harry and the Hendersons. So every time he went near the ball, it was Harry and the Hendersons. And then when Mil Hannah went near the ball, he was the light bulb. So anytime Mil Hannah went near the ball, light bulb. And there was another number of other very interesting nicknames, all of which were added to the theatre of the day. And then if I've got one other Princess Park story, which may or may not be of interest to you. You should never have left this open to me, but I'm showing my age here by referencing all those people, but I was a kid watching those games rather than actually playing in them. So I lived in Melbourne. I won't say the year, but there was a player for Melbourne called Darren Bennett. Went off to become an NFL punter. And whenever Darren Bennett played at Princess Park, if he got a shot for goal from anywhere inside 50, he could actually kick the ball outside of the stadium. So we were living in Melbourne, and we didn't have a lot of money. So the idea of being able to potentially jag a Sharon by just walking outside of Princess Park was pretty appealing. So we used to rock up, and anytime we'd be listening on the radio, and if Darren Bennett took a mark, we would then duck out from behind a tree and try and pinch the footy, unsuccessfully, unfortunately. But I don't know if that was what you were referencing, but you left the door open. I just had to tell you a few silly stories there.
No, that's all right. And also, I just wanted to ask about how the midfield dynamic's working. Obviously, the experience of Anne Hatchard and Ebony Marinoff has helped, and it's allowed you to put in the likes of Rochelle Martin into the midfield. Has that been a pleasing aspect for you and the rest of the coaching group, that you've been able to filter through some of the younger players?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's part of the growth of the group, and it's interesting when we talk about Anne and Ebony, those senior players who are all of 22 and 23, but they are experienced in AFLW terms. So to see Rochelle come in, Hannah Button's spent quite a bit of time through there this year. At other stages, Danielle Ponter's even been there a little bit. So yeah, we want to keep expanding that midfield rotation. This week we've got a good challenge. They've got probably the dominant ruck in the competition in Moody. Maddie Prespakis, Lucy McAvoy, top end picks, Georgia G. So there's going to be a really good midfield battle, as there is most weeks, to be honest. But yeah, so those players that you mentioned are critical in our success. They're often the starters of our performance.